it's been a really special day so far. I think this global collaborative community it's the most special part of iEARN, and this really begins with educators connecting and working together. But what we wanted to focus on right now during the session is what does that exactly look like, and how do you build these global partnerships and foster them to incorporate a global perspective into your curriculum. So I'm thrilled to welcome Faye to join me today for this session. Faye is a iEARN Global Education Ambassador. She is currently based in beautiful Winchester, Virginia, and was the library media specialist at John Hanley High School, which is the school that will be hosting the iEARN International Conference and Youth Summit next year in July. So we're just so thrilled to be working with Faye, and I'm so happy to welcome her here with me today to share about her experience building her global partnerships. So I'm going to pull up my PowerPoint. Okay, great. And Faye, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Signe. I too am delighted to join iEARN on Giving Tuesday to talk about building partnerships, global partnerships. I want to backtrack a little bit to my very first global partnership was in the 1980s when I was an English teacher at Oakland High School in New Cumberland, West Virginia. And I wrote a mini grant, a West Virginia Education Fund mini grant, which gave me a couple $100 to get started. And my very first global partnership was with teachers from Kuwait and from Thailand that I met through a cousin attending an international school there. I had not heard of iEARN, which was just beginning in the 1980s, did not hear anything at all about it. We were using very primitive technology, snail mail. The only really technology thing that we used was we took pictures that we included in a scrapbook that we sent to the schools, and video cameras were just emerging in schools, and we took some videotapes and exchanged those, but I never had the opportunity to talk to the teachers. My students never had the opportunity to see or have video conferences with the students. And other than the videotapes that we exchanged, that was the limited technology, that we had. You're looking at a picture right now that really is the culmination of a partnership that I had with two educators during the last school year. And in the foreground, you can see the girl in the pink and the boy in the green shirt are students from John Hanley High School in Winchester, Virginia, and they were able to attend the iEARN International Conference and Youth Summit in Morocco last summer. And they were part of a film club project that we had at John Hanley High School. And the other students seated at the table are students from Morocco, the OKE Language Center. And their teacher was able to bring them to Morocco to attend the conference. So there were more of them with their proximity to the conference, but it was just such an experience to be able to meet the students that we had been communicating with online and video conferencing with, and this picture really shows the person-to-person contact as well. It was the result of our global partnership. I do want to add that I am no longer the library media specialist at John Hanley High School. I retired in May, but am very committed to doing what I can in my retirement years to help foster global relationships and global education, and to serve as iEARN's ambassador, and plan to stay involved in any capacity that I can. Okay, the next slide will show you the picture of the two global partners that I had in a film club project. The gentleman in the red shirt is KHALID Fethi, who is the director of the OKE Language Center in Burkane. And on my my left, the right on the screen, is Dr. Helene Marshall, who is a professor at Longwood University in New York. And I believe in the next slide, you will see the agenda for today's session and what we plan to cover with as much time as we have are the 6 questions that you see there on this slide. So we'll cover how we met and what did we do and why we were successful and in what ways global partnerships can connect to your curriculum and why I believe it's so important to develop global partnerships in education and perhaps what we should also know about cultural differences. Okay, the next slide shows how we got connected. And an author of a wonderful book that I'll reference at the end says that building global partnerships is often a crapshoot, that it's a matter of luck. And I agree with that, to some extent, because I really was very lucky that Dr. Helene Marshall happened to find the International Book Club on the iEARN website, and in that way found me. But she was interested in building a partnership with KHALID Fedi in Morocco and using films for a partnership they had already started, using flipped learning and using films connecting students in Morocco to students in the United States to give that flipped learning a different perspective, a global perspective. So I received this email one day from Dr. Marshall, just basically asking, is there a chance that you would be interested in this? And my response was, of course, why not? Let's go for it as long as we can relate the film somehow to the International Book Club project that I was facilitating. So if you're interested, if you're an educator, regardless of where you are, and you are interested in developing global partnerships, there are many ways that you can find global partners. You can, find them with existing networks that you're already a part of, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Family Connections, whether it's LinkedIn. There are so many different ways that you might meet people that may have goals that are similar, that may want to connect to you with educational projects. But I have found that through iEARN, it's not a crapshoot. You can, definitely using the different projects that they offer, using the search tools, using the teachers forum. There's just so many different ways through iEARN that you can seek global partners that have the same goals that you do and the same interests, and seek a global partner through that network. So iEARN was really responsible for my getting to know Dr. Marshall and Mr. Fedi, who I did not know, but they found me through iEARN. Okay, and on the next slide, you will see, you will see what did we do. Once Dr. Marshall introduced KHALID and I, what did we do? What did our partnership look like? So we formed an international film club that was kind of a subcategory of the International Book Club in iEARN. And I was not a classroom teacher, okay, so I was a library media specialist at John Hanley High School, but I sought teachers in our school in addition to the library assistants that worked in our school library and connected the students in a leadership class and in a theater class and our library assistants to the students who were studying English language at OKE in Burkane. So one of the things, before we got the students involved, we met often. KHALID and Helene and I had many, I would say about 11 through the course of the semester, 11 teacher planning video conferences, and we had communicated many times during email, but we planned together as far as what the students would do and what the activities would look like and how we would evaluate our success. So we did have, many video conferences. As I said, some of them were teacher planning conferences. We had guest speakers that in some way were tied to the movies that that we watched and to the student discussions. And then we had some conferences in which the students were able to talk to one another. We had some problems with technology. So just like in the last session, if you were tuned into that, there will be times when connections are bad and things don't work quite the way that you want. But one of the things that I'm really delighted about is that we're making improvements in the way that we're connecting through video conferences. I think we're seeing better success with that. We engaged in forum activities. The students introduced each other. They watched movies, and then we had different class activities in the forum in which the students engaged in written discussions. Some of them involved questions perhaps that we formulated as teachers, but then eventually we had the students forming the questions themselves. We had different evaluation, like with any successful teaching, you have to have some feedback, knowing whether it works or not. So we had some student surveys through Google Forms and some other informal feedback sessions in which we listened to the teachers that were involved, and we also listened to the students to evaluate how successful our project was going. And then, as I said before, the culmination of the activities that we did was being able to attend the conference in Morocco. So I finally got to meet KHALID Fedi and Dr. Helene Marshall in person for the first time at that conference, and our students attended the Youth Summit together, and then both teachers and the students presented at the conference, and we were able to attend, and this was one of the highlights for me, a dinner at an organization called Amal in Morocco. One of the films that we viewed was Homeless to Harvard, and many of our discussions took place about poverty and homelessness and the importance of an education. And Amal is a nonprofit charity in Morocco that teaches women who are either homeless or disadvantaged in some way. It teaches and trains them to cook. And we had an amazing dinner together as we supported this nonprofit in Morocco. So one of the things that I also love about iEARN is that it's not just learning for the sake of academic learning, but service learning is often involved. So we were able to witness what Amal does to change the plight of women who are disadvantaged or homeless, and it was the best meal that we had in Morocco that week, and it was a wonderful time to celebrate our success together. Okay, in the next slide, I just have a few pointers on, if you are working towards building a global partnership with other teachers in different countries, what do you need to do to be successful? And as I reflected on what I felt was a successful project, these are the things that I wanted to share with you. The first is that frequent communication is important. I've had other attempts at projects with some amazing people, but if the lines of communication didn't keep going, if we stopped communication or there was a lull in conversation, for a month or more, it was really hard to make things work. So you have to be willing, whether it's through video conferencing, through email, through the teacher forum in iEARN, you have to communicate with the teachers that you're going to partner with. The second point is keeping an open mind. I think that it's not possible to have a successful project or engage in global education if you come with a set mindset that this is what you want to accomplish, this is how you want to accomplish it, and this is how it's going to be. You definitely have to have an open mind, and in conversations with your global partners, be willing to consider suggestions that they have. That openness is definitely very, very important, as it is in any collaboration among teachers. The next thing is I felt that we did a really good job of sharing our responsibilities and talents. At any time that we planned something, whether it was one of us who was perhaps more familiar with using a Google form and preparing a survey, and another one perhaps coming up with the teacher activities, it definitely was not one-sided. All three of us as educators were involved in this project, and all three of us contributed our talents and took responsibility for different aspects of it, and that certainly helped to make it work. I think that the activities that we had for the students were engaging, and they were relative to the films, to the topics that they were studying, and to things that were important in, in their lives. And I think that the engaging activities were also helped us to be successful. We eventually encouraged student leadership. The first film that we watched, the teachers came up with the activities and the questions, but after that, we asked the students to take responsibility, different students to start the discussions, to formulate the questions, and that's an important part of, particularly on the middle school and the high school level, having those students emerge as leaders. In any of the projects that iEARN has, I think that every project in some way promotes 21st century skills. And we certainly tried to, in designing the student activities and our involvement, we wanted the students to be creative thinkers, we wanted them to be collaborators, we wanted them to be critical thinkers, good communicators, and using technology well. And so the project, although it dealt with different subject areas, it also definitely promoted those 21st century skills, which led to, I think, a successful experience for the students. And then finally, throughout any project that you do globally, I think that you have to keep in mind that you've got to be flexible, which is part of like having an open mind as well, but also patience and perseverance. There were times that we would plan a video conference and we were so excited about a guest speaker, but then we would have a technical problem that was a bit frustrating for us, but the technology got better with more experience, and it does require patience and perseverance and being able to agree on perhaps a time to meet, different activities, deadlines, those kinds of things require those character traits of flexibility, patience, and perseverance. So I think that we need to keep that in mind as we develop global partnerships. Okay. On the next slide, I wanted to emphasize how when you're connecting with a teacher in another country whose curriculum is not the same as yours, how is it that you can possibly get engaged in a project when you're teaching one thing and a group of students that has one set of skills, and you're working with a teacher who's teaching something else and whose students perhaps have other skills but aren't as proficient maybe in the use of English as your students. Not that the students in Morocco were not proficient. Trust me, they were amazing communicators in the English language. But KHALID's classes, really emphasized speaking English. And so many times as he was working with films, he was working with idioms and different expressions the students might not understand, building vocabulary, working on pronunciation so that they sounded like Americans, okay, and perhaps eliminating accents, okay, so that might have been his emphasis. There was a leadership class at John Hanley who was participating in the film club project and also our library assistants, and one of our things was to have the students reading some books that dealt with leadership. So in this diagram, I'm just kind of showing how a class in the US might be dealing with the leadership literature as part of their curriculum, and the language class in Morocco was stressing language skills. But what brought us together was the movie Invictus, which both schools watched, and our discussion in the forum and in a video conference had to do with examples of good leaders in our countries and our communities, and what leadership skills we wanted to see emerging in ourselves and also in the people that we elected to represent us. So when you're thinking of global partnerships, it's not that you have to be teaching the exact same thing the exact same way that your global partner is, but you find common element in whatever project you're participating in that brings you together. You can have different lessons, but what is it that we will do together as part of our global collaboration? Okay. And next, KHALID Fetty could not be with us today. He had another commitment, but in the last video conference that I had with him, making plans for something else that we are working on together, I asked him a couple of questions, and we pulled his comments, and I wanted him to participate by sharing with you his thoughts so that you saw the perspective from my global partner in this as well. So I think that Signe is going to show you the video here, and I asked him to address two questions that I invite you to listen to his response.
Thank you. So I think the first thing is exploring, discovering, and knowing more things going on in the overseas, because most of the time, the students do not really know what's going on. They know the countries, they know nations, cultures, civilizations, just through the mass media. But when they are involved, they know exactly what it's about. And this interaction, actually, it helps and it enables the students to know more from an authentic, situation or authentic experience, and from that they can base their learning and their interaction, and also they base their interaction with other people. So this way of helping the students moving from getting the information from the media to getting the information from the source and sharing with the friends and exchanging with the people, it helps a lot. This is number one. Number two, I always say to the students that one hand never claps. So I also can say that one catcher can never clap. So we need more catchers. So this multiculturalism help the students develop their way of viewing the world, help them developing their way of preparing themselves for the future, because most of them think of continuing their studies abroad. So at least there will be no culture shock. They have already experienced it. Other people's environment, way of thinking, in a much better way. And I see the experience we had in Marrakech was very, very fruitful. And sometimes when we discuss with the students about how it was the experience, they said, okay, it was amazing. We could know new friends, we made new friends, we exchanged a lot of things that we cannot exchange, using a social media or something. This is one of the ways how you can do it. And also it's more serious. So the context is more serious. So when the students are interacting with international students, they know there is a time limit, so they have to get the max in a very limited time. And this conciseness helps them a lot to learn and to share in very limited time, and to keep that reflection on that, in the follow-up and after the discussions and everything. So the subject becomes always, alive in their minds, and also it's always continuing if ever there is any interaction with any partner or any person from another side, so we can have some basics on which we can start our discussions. So actually, what we have to insist on, and this is what I usually do with my students, we have to insist much more on the shared values. We should not go to touchy issues or things that are actually controversial, because many times we spend much time dealing with the details that are controversial, and we forget there are a lot of things that we share. The human values are great. So why want devoting more time and dedicating our efforts and everything we have to what we share, and we exploit and we invest more time and more especially culturally speaking, investing more time on that than discussing some more things that I do feel that are controversial, and we cannot solve and fix them earlier or later. So this is the first thing. The second thing, we have to try to be very selective. Who are we speaking to? Because many people believe, as an example, when we take the issue of terrorism, that's a big issue now in the world. We have to know who we are speaking to. For instance, when you were in Morocco, and maybe you have seen that people are very peaceful. So those problems of terrorism and the problems of this kind of culture conflicts, etc., do not really exist in larger scale in our countries. Where they can exist in countries where people are marginalized. If you take what's going on in France, so we have to ask a bigger question: who are those people who are doing that? It's not people it's most of them people who have been marginalized, people who are accepted and integrated in the French society or the European society or whatever society. You can find them. They are very moderate. They know what is the right, what is wrong, and they are very selective. You can say they are culturally or religiously mature. And this is one of the points that we have to consider. As for Morocco, I don't think there is a problem similar to what is going on in the world, because most of the people in schools, thanks to their teachers, they understand their culture in a very moderate way, and when they interact with the external world, and they do so because it's a part of our curriculum. It's a part of our, let's say, our religion, because our religion insists on that, on moderation. So they are very conscious of these points, so they can interact without any problem. I think the experience you had in Marrakech with my students, it's I think most of the students in Morocco have nearly the same view, the same opinion, and they share nearly the same ideas. So I don't think there is something that we have to become like an issue, to take it like a huge issue, and we are scared and we don't want to discuss it. There are some limits. Maybe the discussion we had online, like with about dating, about girlfriends, those are part of our culture. It's not easy to change it, and the people still believe in that, and it's a very common. So I don't think that someone is going to discuss a similar issue with the Moroccan person, but there are other things to discuss. And I see it's the same thing if you go to Algeria or if you go to Tunisia. It's the same way of thinking. So there are a lot of similarities. So that's why I say we need more to concentrate on what we share than concentrating on things that are more, debatable.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. There's so much. Okay, I think you can see how wise Khalid is, and what a great person he was to work with. I was concerned, many times I wanted to make sure that our American students were respectful of the way that his students dressed, their lifestyle. I wanted to impress on them that our job, and the whole purpose of our collaborating was to build an appreciation and understanding and a friendship that we are not trying to change people's thinking or their their beliefs, that we are not in any global partnership, we shouldn't be trying to fix or influence, but to develop that respect and that appreciation, and as for what's different about us. But as Khalid said, I think so wisely, that you'll find that if you get involved in global education with students of a different culture, you will find that you have so much more in common with them. And they're so excited to meet each other and to form those friendships, and that we do have much more in common than we have than differences that we might have. So it was amazing for our students to be able to see that and to form those friendships. And I know from talking to a couple of the students that were in Morocco that those friendships have continued. The students that they met there have continued dialoguing and communicating with one another, which I think is amazing. Okay, and on the next slide, you'll see another very well-known and respected global educator, Yoko Takagi, who has just inspired so many of us. And this is a picture taken of her at the conference in Morocco. She is so youthful and energized, and has inspired many others. But in another project that I was working on for a presentation for a Malala fundraiser, I had asked her to speak about what she felt was her purpose in life. I was addressing young women at John Hanley High School that belonged to a club called Women with a Purpose. And I had different people that I have met, women that I have met who I feel have fulfilled amazing purposes in their life. And we thought that you might enjoy listening to her reflection on her purpose in life and what iEARN has to do with it, and how important education and global partnerships can be in making our world a better place. So I hope you enjoy this short film clip of Yoko's.
Near the end of World War II, over 1 million people were left in Manchuria without any protection of Japanese soldiers nor the government, and faced Russian soldiers' violent attacks days and nights. Then made long refugee lines to Kyoto port, where the ship was waiting to carry them back to Japan. Yoko, 6 years old, was one of them, threatened by black guns and hunger. I asked myself why wars change the human to such brutal animals, how to stop wars, and my childish mind answered, make friends in the world. Friends cannot attack friends. Simple. My family was very poor in Japan, but I enjoyed safe daily young girl life, concealing all the awful memories of my childhood as if nothing had happened. In 1973, one of the newspaper articles caught my eyes, which was a group of Vietnam children crying and running away from soldiers' napalm bombs. One girl, Kim, was naked, and I saw Yoko on her. All my pain and fear back to me again, and realized wars are still around the world. Children are crying today. I have 3 projects now: Machinto Hiroshima for Peace, Anne Frank panel exhibition, and Gomi on Earth. I'm connecting children, students, teachers in the world by facilitating projects. At my age of 77, I can tell that my purpose in life has been and will be make friends and prevent wars through education. Every single experience, happy or harsh, shapes one's life and its purpose. In my case, an invisible bud of purpose was born out of my harsh childhood with World War II, shaped a clear image at Vietnam War, and will keep it on till I die. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to Yoko. You know, we're close to the end of what I want to share with you today, but before I close, I just want to reflect. You know, I worked as an educator for 45 years, and you know, some days my mission was to get those students to quit making mistakes in the use of commas and complex sentences. You know, as I was teaching English, that was my goal for the day. Let's teach that. And as I reflect over you know, my role in education and what all of our roles should be, really, if we stop and think about it, like, what is the purpose of education? Why are why do students spend so much time in school? Why do teachers devote their lives to it? And although we have many content standards to teach, many goals to fulfill, isn't the ultimate one really the purpose of education? To make the world a better place. And I want to just kind of comment on that again, and how can we do that? How can we make the world a better place through education? And iEARN is such a great way to do that, because you can build global partnerships, and as Yoko said, making friends will bring about peace in the world. And as we work on the projects, all of them connecting to one of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, we're not just learning for the sake of learning, but our learning has a purpose. We are teaching our students that their learning can have an impact on the world, that they can make the difference, and that each one of us, for the time that we are given on earth, should use our talents, our knowledge, our education to do what we can to make the world a better place. And that, I believe, can only happen if we don't learn in isolation, but we learn together with global partners, and developing those relationships where you really get to know and work closely with teachers in other countries, I think is an important consideration as we look for the direction that education is taking today. I have recommended reading for you a book that I have come across. It was just published this past summer, called The Global Education Guidebook by Jennifer D. Klein. If you're a novice or if you're experienced and you'd like to learn more about global education, there are many chapters and sections in this book that do offer advice for building those global partnerships and maintaining them to result in good things happening in your classrooms. Okay, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, Signe, for moderating. I'm not sure if there are any questions on the Facebook Live page, or if you've gotten any questions that need to be addressed.
Thank you, Faye, so much. Yep, you're monitoring the Facebook Live, and no questions, but lots of hellos and agreements with what you're saying during your presentation. Ed Gregert says hello. We have Manuela from Romania, Besma from Tunisia. A lot of people are chiming in and saying hello. So thank you all so much for joining us.
In fact, I'm meeting with Besma in another video conference tomorrow morning to talk about what we can do for the International Book Club to make it easier for teachers to have their students discussing and sharing projects about books that they're reading through the iEARN project called the International Book Club. So I'll look forward to video chatting with Besma tomorrow. That's
wonderful. Faye, we did actually have one question come in before we wrap up. Saliha and Rashid from the earlier session are joining us as well. And Saliha actually shared a question for you, which is, do you think that if students' ideas are different, there will be no partnership?
No, I think that having a difference of ideas is good. You know, that we need to encourage students to share their ideas. But if they disagree with one another, or if there's a difference, there's a way of, and again, us teaching them how to do that respectfully and politely and with courtesy. But real education doesn't occur if we don't allow our students to be critical thinkers and to be able to express disagreements that they might have, but doing so in a polite and positive way. And if we all are yes people, then ideas don't emerge for solutions, to problems. So no, I think that it is important. It is important to allow students to disagree with one another, just as healthy debates in any classroom are good, right? Even if they disagree with the teacher, they should be able to support their opinions. And we need to teach them that, that freedom of speech is a good thing, but we also need to teach them respect for differences of opinions and an understanding of why those differences may exist.
That's really well said. Thank you. I believe those are all the questions we had. Thank you once again, Faye, so much for joining us and for sharing about your partnership with KHALID.